G'day, I'm Ben Lawson from Common Thread Consulting. After posting a video on assurance in local water utilities a couple of days ago that was pushing an hour, I now feel I'm able to produce the 5-minute version that Andrew Francis from Parks asked for in the first place. I didn't feel I could do so before because the story that I'm about to tell won't give us assurance that our town water supplies will be secure through the next drought, any more than the bureaucratic plans we've been trying to write since the last drought will. What we need is a management system that integrates planning, monitoring and improvement. But having sketched out that management system in the longer video, I can now simply sketch out the story that represents that management system. The story is the system. And I must admit, I reckon it'll probably take me closer than 15 minutes to tell that story once I've put it in the context of the problem it's designed to solve, but it's better than 54 minutes. So what's this story about? A safe and secure water supply is one of our most fundamental needs. Gaining assurance that our local governments can meet that need for their local communities is vital. While we trust water quality from the tap, water security is different. It's a problem that only emerges in droughts. And in the 2019 drought, we were in all sorts of trouble across regional New South Wales. The Auditor-General diagnosed our problem as a lack of support for regional town water supplies due to the department's ineffective oversight of strategic planning since at least 2014 and a lack of strategic evidence-based approach to targeting of investment. Less than 10% of utilities had plans in place in 2020, but now, 5 years on, it's still less than 10%. But the problem in a drought is not a lack of plans, but a lack of water, right? This is a problem of leadership, not paperwork. The real issue is confusion over roles and responsibilities. Local government, not state government, is responsible for ensuring the safety and security of their local water supply. State government agencies play an oversight role, but there's clearly confusion amongst those within the state government's bureaucracy because our Auditor-General, having done all this investigation, came away with the impression that the department is the primary regulator of local water utilities. It's not. The Office of Local Government is the primary regulator of local government, including in relation to the performance of their local water utility functions. But given the Auditor-General concluded that OLG does not conduct effective proactive monitoring to enable timely risk-based responses to council performance and compliance issues, including monitoring performance in relation to the provision of a secure water supply, and that OLG hasn't been promoting better practice since 2014, it's no wonder that the department aspires to regulate local water utilities. OLG isn't doing its job. But what local communities in regional New South Wales really need from the department is the targeting of investment in their town water infrastructure. But what the department needs from local government to perform this crucial role is evidence-based advice on the threats to water security and other goals associated with water utility functions, together with how to solve these problems and how much it will cost, and how much councils can afford to throw at these problems themselves given their competing priorities. So this is a problem of leadership, not paperwork. Local leaders must wake up and see our state government can't solve the problems your local communities face for you, but they can support you in solving them with targeted investment if you get your story straight. So that's what the Common Thread framework is about. It's a tool to support local leaders to tell a story with service as the common thread. The story is represented by the journey that local communities take aboard this ship. The primary role of civic leaders is to allocate the resources of their local community used by executive leaders to operate the ship. The primary role of the executive leaders is to provide advice to those steering the ship. But first and foremost, council's leadership at all levels must establish a common purpose in consultation with their local community. This is the common thread in the story that goes like this. The advice from executive leaders to the civic leaders in steering the ship is about what the present situation is in the real world, in the context of what our goal is, which the leadership of Parks Shire Council has elaborated here in the delivery program in terms of what a safe and secure water supply looks like to them and, I'd argue, everyone. So council establishes this goal in the context of the needs and expectations of their local community in the community strategic plan, which is about why we do what we do in the first place. But we must abandon abstract goals like a safe and healthy community and instead ground our goals in the real world. What does a safe and secure water supply look like? What do safe roads look like? Or beyond the functions that a council is itself responsible for, what does appropriate health and allied services look like? A doctor in Parks Hospital. But then, having oriented ourselves, we can focus in on the common purpose established by council's leadership for its own functions and ask, how sure are we that we can and will realise our goal given how we plan to do what we do? The activities to perform this function within the resources available in the resourcing strategy. So this is the integrated planning and reporting framework. The delivery program, resourcing strategy, the community strategic plan, but land use planning bookends the planning process in the common thread framework so that it's grounded in reality, so that the story that we tell is a true representation of the real world. And then civic leaders chart the journey each year via the annual operational plan. They steer the ship by adjusting the levers in the revenue policy and so allocate the resources utilised by the executive leaders to undertake the activities to perform the functions. And then the annual report documents what council has achieved relative to its goals. But what's missing from this story is firstly advice in the form of monitoring to provide assurance that we're on track in the form of lead indicators. Will our water be safe to drink? Not just reporting on lag indicators. Was our water safe to drink? And more broadly, looking further ahead, advice on the strategic risks to achieving our goals overall. And all that's the purpose of the risk management framework in ISO 31000, to integrate risk management into significant activities and functions. And the common thread framework helps councils to do so, and so creates an integrated planning and assurance and reporting framework. That, as incredible as it may sound, enables civic leaders to steer the ship with no more support than this service dashboard, which encompasses what we do across the board, and then via these dozen functional categories supported by the council and corporate function that not only supports the performance of the functions that council is itself responsible for, but also advocating on the community's behalf in relation to functions performed by others, such as provision of appropriate health and allied services. And so in an environment of trust which we establish via a management system, which gives us assurance that the story we're telling is true, that it represents the real world, we are confident that we'll get robust and timely advice, that given how we plan to do what we do, the resources we're investing in this specific activity to perform this specific function, we are not going to realise our goal. That's what the red warning light on this dashboard is showing, right? This is all we need to do to communicate clearly once you've got a common purpose. In so doing, the civic leaders can steer the ship, because council's leadership team generally starts asking and answering the right questions. What's the threat? How do we change course to gain sufficient assurance that we'll reach our goal? How much will that cost? So, for example, the most urgent threat causing the light to flash red at Parks was that the pipeline from Lake Endeavour was taken out by the 2022 floods. There's nothing council's executive leaders can do to control this risk other than drawing water from the remaining alternative sources, and so the risk level, even with these controls in place, remains high. And the only way to treat that risk is to seek support to replace the pipeline or to develop a financial plan to pay for the project using the local community's own resources. But as it turns out, our state government shares council's goal of water security in Parks Shire and wants more assurance that council can provide a safe and secure water supply. Even though this is a local government responsibility, the state government's there to back them up. And how they did that was to provide a grant of $22.9 million, which was how much council needs to address this threat. So executive leaders have advised the civic leaders, who've then advocated to state government for assistance on behalf of their local communities, because given how much it was going to cost to fix the pipeline, if those resources were to be allocated from within council's own organisation on board the ship, it wasn't just a case of council not having enough cash in the bank. It could borrow the money, but then it would almost certainly need to increase water charges, the fare that council charges the passengers, the local community who they're taking on this particular journey to in order to keep that ship on an even keel, to make an adjustment on the revenue side of the ledger via the revenue policy to invest more of their own resources in solving this problem. And the thing is that councils are already under pressure from all these other threats that council has also identified on the horizon, looking ahead, not least catering for the growth associated with the Special Activation Precinct and North Parkes mine. And so instead, our state government has taken on board the advice from council's leadership about the present situation. They face the lack of assurance that they can provide given the limited resources they have available and the competing priorities for those resources in relation to the goal of water security in Parkes Shire. And so having rained down the funding from above in the form of a $22.9 million grant, remember, that's the key issue is that local leaders don't have the power to adjust these levers, or they've only got a part of an opportunity to do so in collaboration with higher levels of government. And so that's why council is now charting a course that gives the community more assurance that its goal of a safe and secure water supply will be realised. It's not a sure thing. The warning light is still flashing red, but council can happily tick off this number one threat here, that not because it has written a plan, but because it has been able to provide clear evidence-based advice to our state government, and they're targeting an investment to support the local community of Parkes Shire to solve this problem. So in terms of the evidence-based targeting of investment, the evidence in this case was very clear. You can go out and see the pipeline for yourself. It's definitely been destroyed, but where it gets more complicated is then evaluating the local community's capacity to solve its own problems without external assistance from state government. And look, I acknowledge the problem of water security in regional New South Wales is generally a lot more complicated than in this example, but this is the framework for telling this story. This is where local leaders need to wake up and see that our state government is clearly struggling. It's confused who is responsible for regulating local government in general and their local water utility functions in particular. Our Auditor General's coming up with the wrong answer here, and she's basically characterised the problem in the last drought as a lack of plans. And 5 years on, our progress in solving that problem has been very limited, let alone solving the practical problem of a lack of water. And so my pitch to local leaders is to call on you to join Parkes Shire Council in a coalition of those willing to take responsibility for solving their own problems, to get their story straight, to tell that story coherently and consistently, to provide the advice the department needs to perform the role that local communities across regional New South Wales really need it to perform, not writing plans but targeting investment in the solutions local government needs to implement to give their local communities sufficient assurance that their town's water supply will be secure through the next drought. I'm not saying the 60-odd councils with integrated water cycle management strategies in preparation should abandon that project. Perish the thought. I'm saying with Dwight Eisenhower that plans are nothing, planning is everything. I'm singing along with John Lennon that life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And so to wrap this up, I'll remind you again of the trust that we all display in the quality of our drinking water every time we drink water from our taps, which we've earned by adopting a management systems approach. We need to adopt the same approach to all this to this problem of water security. In fact, all aspects of local water utility functions in particular, and all functions of local government in general. And remember, councils have to do all this anyway, via what you could call the Integrated Planning and Assurance and Reporting Framework, the IPAR framework. Given that a risk management framework is not optional in local government any longer, and that ISO 31000 is about integrating risk management into all significant activities and functions, which means integrating it within IPAR, and given the criticality of local water utility functions, surely they should be at the head of the queue, right? My longer video explains what it looks like, but think of water quality as the limit case example. All stakeholders want and get 100% assurance that the water coming out of our taps is safe to drink. We don't want or need, indeed we cannot afford such certainty in relation to all functions that local government performs. But my point is that we can only get any real assurance by taking an integrated and systematic approach to managing the most complex organisation in our local area. I call this the Common Thread Framework. I describe this as civic leaders telling a story with service as the common thread, which executive leaders then enact in the real world. Again, our stories can be true, fact not fiction, if they accurately represent the real world. Telling stories can give stakeholders assurance if those who authored those stories have earned our trust. Anyway, I've not only blown my goal of a 5-minute version, I've blown the goal of a 15-minute version, but that's better than 54 minutes. So I guess that's probably a key point to take away. Gaining assurance in local water utilities is not a 5 or a 15 or a 54-minute exercise. It's a huge challenge, but it's worth doing. And so if you'd like to discuss how I can help you to take up that challenge rather than waiting for our state government to solve your problems for you, I'd encourage you to reach out to Andrew Francis at Parkshire Council, or you can contact me. My contact details are on my website, commonthreadconsulting.com.au. But for now, thanks for watching.